What's going on, everyone? Lauren Sisler here with AL.com. Matt Zenitz, our SEC insider, to talk about Alabama's coaching staff. You know, Nick Saban obviously has the task of bringing in new guys every year. They recycle them out for the NFL. The same has been the case for the coaching staff, guys moving on. And last year we saw his coaching staff, him really having to implement and put in a lot of new guys. And for the most part, it seems like it works. So I want to get your overall take on the perception of the coaching staff and who Nick Saban put into place on both sides of the football.
Well, I agree with you. For the most part, the feedback has been, largely positive, both from a coaching standpoint and then also from a recruiting standpoint. So one of the big goals for Coach Saban last year when he was putting this staff together was, I think, to get some new energy from a recruiting standpoint. And you look at what this class has right now for 2019, it's tremendous. So if I remember the numbers correctly, and this is just off the top of my head, but after they got the two flips the other day, the two commitments the other day, I think at that point, Alabama for this 2019 class had, and maybe still has, 23 commitments that are either 4 or 5-star recruits, and at least at that point, nobody else in the country had more than 16. They're really putting together a terrific class, and it's largely a product of just the work of this new staff, the combination of guys from, Carl Scott was responsible for, or the lead recruiter on the two guys that they got flips from the other day. Pete Golding has done a good job, and just across the board, this new staff has brought some new energy from a recruiting standpoint, while at the same time doing a good job coaching-wise also.
So the good news is we shouldn't see as many changes as we did a season ago in sort of the coaching search and that carousel. We do, however, will have a change at offensive coordinator. Mike Locksley, now the new head coach at Maryland, will be splitting his duties here going into the college football playoff. Dan Enos, as reported by AL.com, will take over those offensive coordinator duties. Just your overall thoughts on him as a coordinator, why this is a good fit. We saw what he did with this offense, especially with Tua, and even more so in developing Jalen Hurts and making him a better quarterback. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Dan is just somebody who Coach Saban had respect for even before he got to Alabama. So Coach Saban's actually known Dan Enos since Dan Enos was somewhere in the range of like 18 years old, back when Dan was a quarterback at Michigan State and Coach Saban was part of that staff. And I think throughout Dan's coaching career, Coach Saban's followed what he's been doing and just developed an appreciation for him as a coach, and I think has even more of an appreciation just based on what Dan has done behind the scenes at Alabama throughout the course of this last year. Really done a tremendous job from a teaching and coaching standpoint when it comes to that entire quarterback room, obviously led by the Heisman runner-up with Tua. You have Jalen Hurts, who's made tremendous progression, aided by Coach Enos, and just somebody who I think you would be very hard pressed to find anybody inside that building that would have anything negative to say about him. And this was the expectation all along, that Dan would be the guy once Coach Locksley got that job, or when Coach Locksley got another job, that he would be the most likely guy to slide into that offensive coordinator role. And that's obviously the expectation at this point.
And there's been some discussion about potentially other coaches being pursued. What do you know about that? Now, can we expect any other major changes on this coaching staff?
Yeah, that's one of the things that comes along with running a program like Alabama. If you're Coach Saban, you're targeting and bringing in some of the top coaches in the country, and obviously there are going to be other coaches and places that are going to end up being interested in those coaches also. So the primary names at this point that I think are worth keeping an eye on: Pete Golding, who is really a rising star in the coaching world and really highly thought of, not only at Alabama but just in the football world. Josh Gaddis, another one who seems like he's still in the mix for potentially head coach job at Appalachian State. His name's been out there for that. And then even Butch Jones. So Butch Jones has helped Alabama behind the scenes in an analyst type of role this year. There's a decent chance that he ends up at Maryland in an assistant coach capacity, coaching something like tight ends, and then I think would have maybe like the associate head coach title to go along with that. But at least at the time of this taping, which obviously we're taping this early Wednesday afternoon, at least at this point, it's not a done deal with Butch yet to Maryland, and there's still a chance that he could end up staying at Alabama, although I would assume that it would take him getting an on-field job for that to happen. But as far as like Pete Golding Pete, it seems like it's very much a priority for Coach Saban to keep. I know there have been some other opportunities for him, but at this point, it seems like there's at least a decent chance that he will be back at Alabama, and it's definitely somebody that Coach Saban wants to keep around.
And you talk about that priority. What is the importance of having that continuity? Obviously, Nick Saban has been very successful in rotating guys and, obviously only keeping a coach a year or two and then they move on. But the importance of having that continuity and keeping these guys in place.
Yeah, it's important, but once again, I think Coach Saban knows that if these guys do the job that he's bringing them in to do, that there's going to be interest from other places. So it's natural to expect turnover. But I think one of the goals for him last year when he was putting this staff together, so he brought in a lot of younger guys. And I think that one of the goals for him at that point was to bring in some younger guys that maybe would be around for more than just a year.
All right, thanks so much. He's Matt Zenitz. We appreciate the insight as always. And of course, for all your news and analysis on the Alabama Crimson Tide, you can visit us on AL.com.